I work as a crime scene investigator, and let me tell you, it's not as fun or as easy as the media portray. Long hours at random locations, most of which smell horrible. You need to bag everything, hoping you picked up something relevant to the case, and take at least 10,000 photos at different angles. Not to mention all the sketches and diagrams you need to make with accurate notes. The DNA you send off to be tested doesn't come back for months, and most of the time doesn't even help you with the case you're working on. But it's a job. Most of my career has been documenting drug dens. Drug crimes in my area are way higher than any other kind. I was called to a scene of a death caused by unknown circumstances. It was a sight none of us would ever forget. A ghastly scene, and we still haven't been able to unravel the mystery of it. It was a murder. What else could it have been? It wasn't possible that death happened due to natural circumstances. I found myself standing beside my boss, burdened with all my gear, but for once not feeling the weight. I stared, unable to say anything for a few moments. Out of the hundreds of dead bodies I've seen, this one stopped me in my tracks. I was looking at a young girl stuck inside a tree. Literally stuck inside a tree. Her upper half limply hanging out with both arms and the rest of her body still inside of it. There was no hole someone cut to shove her inside. She was too fresh to have the tree grow around her. It was like a video game glitch with an NPC being halfway inside a wall. This was reality, and things like this didn't just happen. We did the normal routine of taking photos and documenting the scene. But everyone was silent. We only spoke when necessary. Something like this was so mind-boggling, I felt as if everyone would want to talk about it to get answers. Instead, we all averted our eyes as much as possible from the dead girl. In the end, a good chunk of the tree was cut out to retrieve the body. To our horror, there wasn't much left. Only an inch of her body was inside the tree. The rest was missing. It took days to finally painstakingly separate the two of them out to find how little we were working with. I had access to the autopsy pictures. For a few hours, I looked through them trying to understand what I was seeing. The parts of her that should be inside the tree were missing. It appeared that the wood had naturally grown around her flesh instead of it being perfectly cut away for her. She was easily identified as a teenager who worked a midnight shift at a gas station. Another confusing fact is that her workplace was located 2 hours away from where she was found dead. And she was on camera leaving the building 1 hour before she was found. There was simply not enough time to transport her, let alone cut her apart and pose the body. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" my boss asked me, as I was in the station looking over the photos. I really shouldn't be looking over them as often as I did. There wasn't much else to learn from just staring at them. My boss crossed himself when he looked down at the photos, even though it had been 10 years since he'd been inside a church. I shook my head. On my time off, I'd been looking up strange deaths online to find nothing like this. Nothing real. Just plenty of fake videos that got my hopes up. An even stranger part of this case was how this was the first time someone asked me about it. I was the one pressing others to answers and asking for the photos to study. The office felt so silent and somber. Everyone worked away in hushed tones. I understood that such a terrible thing was enough to unnerve all of us. But everyone working on the case acted as if they were ignoring it. Some leads were being followed up, but anytime something related to solving what the hell happened to the girl, people became pale and quiet. My boss accepted my head shake as an answer. He gave the photos one last look and left me standing in the break room. No one wanted to talk about what happened. And I don't know if that was the reason why the second death did happen. The second strange death call ended up being for a body inside a building. The deceased was an elementary school teacher. He was loved by everyone, and not a soul had any reason to want him dead. He left behind 2 children and a loving wife. The problem was he lived in the next state over. His wife refused to believe it was him until she came down to look at the body. He was asleep next to her, then in the morning, hundreds of miles away, stuck inside a parking garage ceiling with parts of him missing. The station worked double time following up on any lead. Every available man stayed late at the station or on the move, grasping any kind of straw possible. Finally, some test results came back. When they landed on our boss's desk, none of us believed it. The lab tested parts of the tree to see if there was anything inside the wood like glue that may have helped keep the poor girl in place. The results came back as human DNA mixed perfectly with the tree. I noticed the wood looked a bit darker, but how the hell did the DNA get there? Did the blood seep in and stain it somehow? Because of the results, more pieces of the tree were cut out to be tested. They kept finding human DNA mixed into the wood, far too deep for just blood getting slightly absorbed. The traces finally ended, and we added how much the tree had been contaminated. With some effort and math, the lab determined the DNA mixed with wood was equal to the same amount of missing from the girl. They then tested the cement of the car garage, finding the same results. Again, no one could even begin to offer up theories of how this was possible. It was as if somehow these bodies had become part of the material they were found inside. We were just getting over that shock when the worst happened. Another body had been found, all twisted up like a pretzel inside and outside on the front of a car. My boss wasn't on the scene, but I knew he wouldn't be. The victim had been identified by him after all. It was his car and his niece. I've met Becky a few times. I didn't know if I would be able to document the scene if I knew the victim. But I found it like any other job simply because my mind refused to believe this was the same bright and lively girl that attended Christmas parties. She played piano and my boss always bragged about her. He loved her like a daughter. He and his wife wouldn't have children, so they spoiled Becky as often as they could. And yet, he walked out of his house to get to work and saw her face half clipped into the front of his car. I don't know how he'll ever be able to get over the grief. A neighboring department took over the case due to how many officers simply could not bring themselves to go to the scene. A floor of support came to the family, and still, not a single person spoke about the details. They all just shook their head with haunted looks on their faces, muttering how tragic a young life could have been cut short. I felt determined before to solve this case, but now I wanted nothing more but to figure out the reason behind what was happening. I decided to take copies of the reports home. Every waking hour outside of my normal duties became dedicated to this case without any progress. On my days off, I found myself at home staring at the information I already knew, completely forgetting to eat. No matter if I looked at it from every angle, nothing made sense. There was no method anyone could use to arrange the bodies in the places they were found in. Even if there was, to do so in such a short amount of time was another thing making these cases impossible. I wasn't ever going to solve this on my own. I needed more eyes on these cases. No one would believe they were real, though. I was staring up at the ceiling, thinking in circles when I heard my doorbell. I sat up, looking down the hallway, heart suddenly pounding. No one should be at my door. If I was needed for work, they would just call me. A feeling of dread overtook me when the doorbell rang again. Grabbing my phone in case I needed to call for help, I slowly made my way towards the door. The front door had a frosted window that didn't let me see who was waiting well enough to see and know if I was in danger or not. I opened the door only a crack to try and see who might be outside. "I'm not buying anything," I said, trying to be stern, but my voice was shaking. 2 people stood on my doorstep. One man built like a club bouncer wearing a suit that was far too small for him, most of his face behind a set of sunglasses. Overall, he looked displeased with the world. The second man was tall but thin. His suit fitted him much better. "We're not selling anything. Maybe come in and talk," the smaller man asked as he ducked down and brought his face closer to the opening. The action made me step back a little. He had a calm smile and a soft voice that could put anyone at ease. That worried me. There was something too nice about his manner, as if he tried a little bit too hard to be pleasant. "No, I don't think you can come inside." I closed the door right away, but he already had slipped in a foot to stop me from shutting it. He then got closer as if he'd wanted to tell me a secret. "It's really best for you if we came in to speak about these cases of yours," the stranger said in a low voice. Our eyes met and a chill went down my spine. They both had a menacing air about them, under all that fake kindness. The fact that they knew about the cases and were wearing suits made me think they were of a higher pay grade than myself. FBI or something like that. I really hoped they were the feds taking over the case and just dropping by to make sure I stay silent. If I was stupid enough to talk to the wrong person about these cases, I could tip off the killer. And they didn't know if I was a talker or not. It was a valid theory about who they were, but it all felt wrong. Official agents would have already introduced themselves and shown me badges. They had done neither. Letting them inside was a very bad idea, but I felt as if I would get some answers from them regardless of the danger. Relaxing my grip, I opened the door and the first man came inside. The second needed to duck down to fit through the frame. I led them to the living room, and the thinner one flopped down on the couch, placing one leg over his knee. He looked far too relaxed. The bigger one just stood behind the couch staring. I sat down in my comfy chair. I noticed the thinner one had cream-colored hair, the same shade as my couch. I'd never seen that shade on someone before. He seemed like the type of guy that companies send to put forth a good first impression. Soft brown eyes that could charm anyone, but I just didn't trust them. "I suppose we should make some introductions, Mr. Garcia. We know your name and occupation, but you don't know ours. I go by Jackalope, and my friend over there goes by Nessie. Unfortunately, we can't tell you who we work for or what we do." He started and gestured a thumb over at the silent man. "Jackalope, is that like a code name or something?" I asked, eyebrow raised. "Secret agents have code names. Do we look like secret agents to you?" Jackalope asked, leaning in conspiratorially. It felt like he was teasing me. "What else should I think?" I replied, annoyed. He gave his hand a wave and leaned back. At first, I thought he was digging around in his pockets for some cigarettes, but he pulled out a large round sucker. I waited for him to slowly unwrap it. Once it was in his mouth and his hands in his pockets, he carried on, getting down to the reason why we're here. We work for a company that has an interest in these kinds of cases. We studied them before. They stopped very shortly after we heard about them, and so far, we have not been able to gather that much information," he explained, speaking around his candy. "This happened before? When? Where? How did it stop?" I asked, my body starting to tremble over the thought of it all. These unnatural deaths happened somewhere else, and they could be stopped. I just needed to know the reason why they started in the first place. "I can't outright tell you, but I can give you some hints. We have a working theory of why they stopped. So hint number 1. What is the strangest aspect of these cases?" He pointed a finger at me while his partner remained silent, watching us. It was clear the strangest aspect was the mixture of the DNA and the body's placement. That didn't explain why they stopped. If someone or something could put them inside solid objects, they would keep going. No. What was even stranger than that was the lack of press on these cases. Not a single newspaper printed the story beyond the fact that the body was found. These events should all be over the internet, and yet not even people working on the cases wanted to speak about them. Whenever my coworkers tried, they got a distant look on their faces and tried to avoid the subject. It was a terrible sight almost beyond human understanding, and no one reported about it anywhere. "No one wants to talk about it," I said finally. "Bingo." Jackalope waved his finger, looking happy I arrived at the answer. The more people talked about what was happening, the more it was going to happen. The thought nearly made me sick. I thought of Becky, all twisted inside that car. She was such a kind person and never should have died so soon. If these cases went on, more innocent people would become victims of this strange tragedy. "Are you here to warn me to stop talking about all of this?" I asked meekly. "What? No. We want you to keep talking. Spread this far and wide. Post this online anywhere you like. It doesn't matter if people believe you as long as they know about these cases. More is going to occur." The man sounded all too happy to explain the reason for his visit. It made rage boil up inside me. I shot to my feet, knees shaking. "Do you want more people to keep dying?" I snapped at him. Giving me another kind smile, he waved both his hands to motion me to sit back down. Looking at the bigger silent partner, I decided that was best. I could toss Jackalope out, but not the other man. He waited until I felt calmer before speaking again. "This is going to happen if you speak about it or not. The problem is, we can't figure out where or when. It happened so randomly, we're lucky to be able to arrive here so soon. We just need to study these events while they're going on to solve them. We want to stop them, but that requires sacrifices." "I'm not going to sacrifice anybody," I replied without thinking. He looked at me as if he was dealing with a troublesome child. Running a hand through his tied-back hair, he paused to try to think of the right words to explain what he wanted to say. I understood what he was getting at, but couldn't stand the thought of it. "That's a respectable answer. I know you don't want to be the cause of someone dying, but this could save a lot of people in the future. If we could just study 1 or 2 of these events while it was happening, we could put an end to them once and for all. If you can't burden yourself with this task, we can find someone else. Although it seems as if you're the only one working this current set of cases willing enough to do it." "Why can't you two say something then? Scared to get fired or something?" There was more venom in my voice than needed. I was confused, scared, and angry. Most of my rage sputtered out when I watched both men look at each other. When Jackalope looked back at me, he had an expression I couldn't place. Something forlorn and almost distraught. Taking a hold of the stick of his sucker, he bit down and started to chew through the remains of his candy, making me flinch. Do you know why we're called Nessie and Jackalope? Because those creatures don't exist. I felt a chill go through me as cold brown eyes stared me down. I knew now there was something much more going on than I originally thought. These men may be working for something way bigger than any government. And for a small moment, I didn't think either of them was human. When the air between us settled, Jackalope placed both hands on his knees to start to get up from the couch. Well, it's been nice chatting with you. You have a nice and comfy couch. Standing up, he looked at the other man and gave a silent sign for him to start walking toward the door. It's just an old ratty couch, I said, feeling as if I should correct him on something. Sometimes it's a special thing to become old, and to be able to own older items, he replied with a smile. He was strange. I was scared of what he represented, but in a way, I didn't dislike him. He did his job very well by winning people over with his nature. I walked into the door, his partner already outside. You don't need to do this if you find it too difficult. No one would blame you, so don't worry about it. We'll find the answer at some point, Jackalope said, pausing at the door. He rustled in his suit pocket and took out another sucker, but instead of eating it, he held it out for me to take. He then suddenly leaned in very close, and I was positive he was going to unveil some secret knowledge of the case he didn't want his partner outside overhearing. Do you know where to buy the cream flavors of this brand of lollipops? I've been looking all over, he asked in a low voice. I brought my hand up to my mouth to turn a small laugh into a cough, hoping he didn't notice. And taking the candy offered, I found this man stupid but endearing in a strange way. I've seen them at the dollar store, I told him, and his face lit up. Giving me a small wave, he trotted out the front door, closing it behind him. I was left in the hallway, staring with a sucker in my hand and a lot to think about. I could be the reason why someone died horribly, and the reason why loved ones would be suffering for the rest of their lives because of the death of another. But if I didn't do this, then it would just keep happening until someone accepted the hard task of spreading information about these deaths. I've thought about it for a long time. And what really was best in the long run? There was a chance I post this and nothing happens. No new cases come up and it just ends all on its own. While out shopping and still deep in thought, I noticed a small display of the same brand of suckers Jackalope liked. Mixed in were the cream flavors he was after. Buying a few on a whim, I decided then I would be the one who said something about these cases. Even if only one more person finds out about them, it felt like I was actually doing something. I'll update again if any new information comes to light because of my actions. Hey everybody, part 2, I'm back. A few months ago, to catch everybody up, I started working on some very strange cases as a crime scene investigator. Bodies were being found inside solid objects, inside a tree, inside a building, and inside a car. It simply wasn't possible for them to be in those places in such a short amount of time, and the lab results came back suggesting that somehow the bodies had become fused into the material they were found inside. The strangest part about the case was that people stopped talking about it. No newspaper reported them. No one leaked them online. Then I was visited by 2 oddballs looking to be agents of some sort, claiming if I posted about the cases online, more bodies would appear and they might be able to solve what was happening. In the end, I agreed, and became the next victim. One night, I went to bed early for once, When I woke up, I felt an all-encompassing pain, wondering what the hell was happening. I found myself on my back, hard cement under my body, because of the red-hot pain in my stomach. I didn't even notice where I ended at first. I only saw the stone pillar sticking out through my gut. I stared at it in disbelief before letting out some hoarse screams. It hurt so much I could barely make any noise. I put my hands against the stone, feeling its coldness. I prayed this wasn't happening, and I just became aware in the middle of a terrible nightmare. This situation was identical to the cases I had been called on. People with objects clipped inside their bodies, for a lack of a better way to describe it. When I agreed to keep the cases going by posting about them online, I never would have thought how I would not only be next, but the people we found were still alive when they became fused into something. The horror of that thought came over me. How long did Beck live for being all twisted up inside that car? By all rights, I should have died right away. The stone pillar took up most of my stomach, and important organs would have been damaged or gone. Silently sobbing, I tried to see if there was any way I could remove myself from my position. The pillar stood in a line of others with chains attaching them together. They were made to be a barrier to keep people from going off the park or pathway and near the lake just a few feet off. If I pushed myself up, I would get trapped on the chain. I decided I would try and move, hoping that would damage the remaining of my stomach and kill me faster. But my brain hesitated for a few long and painful seconds. I heard a car pull up in the distance, the sound stopping my attempt to move. I knew I was already dead, but in the back of my mind, I wondered if I got medical attention fast enough, I might live. It was an unreasonable thought. I was missing most of my torso from the pillar. People could live without certain things, but not nearly all of their stomach. There wasn't a doctor in the world that could save me. Still, I moved my head towards the sound of someone walking, trying to fight back pain and panic. I saw their shoes first. Clean and shiny professional dress shoes. Not entirely shiny. One had a small scuff from where I slammed my door onto it a while ago. Looking up, I saw the surprised face of a man named Jackalope. He wore a suit and gear bundled up on his back. I wasn't expecting to see you, Mr. Garcia. He sounded honestly shocked. Without addressing me again or attempting to help me in any way, he started to set up high spotlights. Placing down a white tarp within a few minutes, my dark corner of the world turned into a blazing white. He also set up a camera on a tripod but didn't turn it on just yet. The lights looked heavy, although he didn't have any issues setting them up. I whimpered from pain, ready to die as he worked away. I really shouldn't be giving you this so early, but... Taking out a case from somewhere, he placed it down beside me. Due to how much pain I felt from the pillar, I did not feel the prick of a needle going into my arm. Within a minute, the pain faded. My entire body turned warm and loose. I nearly fell asleep, but he gave me another shot that made me keep my eyes open. I still felt drowsy, but thankful for the pause in pain. My head felt heavy, and I turned towards him. His cream-colored hair fell out of the ponytail as he worked. After fixing his hair, he sat down a few feet from me, hands on his knees, studying my situation. "Thank you," I muttered, sounding sleepy. "It's good stuff. Not available to the public for pretty good reasons. Anyway, if you're feeling up to it, I need to ask you a few questions. If we can figure out a link between the victims, we may be able to put an end to this whole mess." He stood up to turn to the camera, but paused when I spoke again. Am I gonna die?" I asked, finding my strength. Yes, he replied after a few seconds. It was a miracle I wasn't dead already. Everything about these cases went beyond logic. Nothing natural could explain how this was happening, or how I wasn't already dead. I wondered how often Jackalope came across cases as strange as this. I just stayed there while he worked setting up his gear. He carried on with his strange job with no hesitations. He didn't even look like he cared that I was going to die soon, aside from a slight pause in telling me my fate. This man sounded and acted friendly, but he might be entirely something else under that mask. Aren't those socks against your company dress code? I asked finally with a weak laugh. Peeking out from his suit pants were a pair of neon green socks. He gave me a small smile, almost looking relieved after I had forgiven him for how he so coldly acted beforehand. I heard him turn on the camera and watch as he sat back down to get on my level. Taking a clipboard, he put it against his legs to look over the questions on the sheet. I still felt sleepy and ready to pass out. It took a lot of willpower for me to stay awake. I reached over to touch the cold stone pillar to remind myself of my fate. I wasn't going to just slip off into a nap. Death waited for me. Now, Mr. Garcia, you can call me Carlos, I interrupted. Carlos, then, he said with a small smile and went back to his clipboard. It says here your mother passed away. Let's see. What was your relationship with her and how did her death change you? I might not understand how or why people were being clipped inside things, but what does my mother have to do with any of this? Becky, one of the other victims, still had both of her parents alive when she passed. Hell, she had never lost a single person in her life before. This line of questioning didn't feel relevant. I loved her and I became motivated to make something of myself when she died. What about your mother? Are you close to her? I mostly tossed his question back at him to waste his time because I felt like he wanted to waste the limited amount I had left. I don't have anything like that. Let's see. He said it in such a matter-of-fact tone it hurt my chest. I long suspected that Jackalope was an agent of some shadow organization. He may have been an orphan raised to do just one job and didn't have any connections in the world. The man simply a living ghost? Having that theory outright proven in so few words felt unexpected. I bought you some of those cream suckers you liked. They're at my place. My spare key is hidden under my happy frog figure on the front lawn if you want to go and get them after I die, I commented, only because the thought crossed my mind. The comment a silly thing to bring up, but I bought them and it would be a waste for them to not make it to their intended person. Jackalope looked a bit surprised again. It appeared as if no one had ever gotten him anything before. Maybe that was the truth. He placed his clipboard beside himself and then brought his long legs against his chest. His arms wrapped under his deeps as he looked deep in thought. Do you have any lingering regrets? He asked me, displaying some somber emotions that didn't suit him at all. What a thing to ask someone while they had a post stuck inside their stomach. Of course I had regrets. I regretted dying to start with. I felt hot tears come to my eyes as my end loomed ever closer. A million thoughts came flooding to my mind because of that question. I felt so scared of death, and strangely at the same time I felt guilty about those thoughts. I don't want to die so soon, but why is that? I don't have anyone. My father was shot in the line of duty and my mother died of cancer. I've dated on and off, but never found a person who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I don't even have a pet. Not even a fish. Why should I want to live? I guess I regret that. Living a life I didn't think was worth living and yet wanting to keep going. It's not fair, you know, that I want to stay alive when I have nothing and no one. Becky still has so many people mourning her. She was going to be something. I needed to stop speaking to choke down sobs. Jackalope listened patiently and started to pick at a wrapper of one of his suckers. He looked unmoved. The only hint he felt a little upset over my rant was how he just couldn't find the start of the wrapper to open it. The pain in my stomach drew my eyes away from him. Whatever he gave me started to wear off, and I assumed I ran out of time. I wasted my entire life, and yet at the end of it wanted to keep going. Just a bit longer for me to do something, anything to make it all worth it. I'm sorry. I raised a weak arm up to rub my eyes. For what? This is a perfectly reasonable reaction, Jackalope replied, but still hadn't gotten the wrapper started. I've made you cry. Unaware of it himself, tears started in the corner of his eyes. Pausing, trying to get his candy free, he raised up a hand to rub one eye and stared puzzled at the wetness on his finger. More tears started to work their way free, and he used the sleeves of his suit to make attempts to dry them. It was a strange sight to see someone crying when they weren't aware of why it happened. That's strange. This shouldn't be possible for me. I knew the thought to be selfish, but I felt glad that he was there in the end. I finally did something in my life, even if that small something just left my mark on a stranger who might not even be fully human. Waves of pain started overtaking my thoughts, and I closed my eyes trying to shut it all out. It was becoming nearly impossible to breathe, and my entire body felt like fire. I might only have a few moments left. I could only hope my death led to some answers as to why people died being clipped inside things, and so this wouldn't happen to someone else. I heard Jackalope's frantic voice calling out my name to try and keep me awake. I never expected him to care so much. The pain kept my eyes closed, but I heard him rushing around back and forth on the white tarp. Whatever he started doing, I felt like I needed to see it. It felt like hours dragged on, but only minutes passed. Opening my eyes a crack, I saw the man I would like to consider a friend kneeling in front of a small, black stone slab. His head bowed and nearly touching the tarp. The black slab was only a few inches tall and wide. Still, it gave off such an ominous look sitting on the top of the white tarp and inside the bright spotlights. Whatever power the slab held, it scared me more than my quickly approaching death. I opened my mouth to ask a Jackalope to stop, but the words died inside my throat. Jackalope lifted his head only enough to meet my eyes. I swear he gave me a little wink. Then a gust of wind slammed into me. I couldn't hear anything through the noise of the tarp flapping around and nearly being blown away. The spotlight slammed the ground, sparks flying. Darkness overtook my sight. Just before my vision faded, I saw that darkness cover Jackalope on the ground. Dark tendrils twisted around him, taking him into the blackness, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. I woke up screaming and tumbled out of my bed. For a long while, I could do nothing but scream and hugged my knees against my chest. When the fear finally started to fade, I sat in shock over being alive in my own room. Frantically, I lifted my shirt, seeing a large scar where the pillar had been. A scar I did not have before that night. My legs were unsteady, so I sat on my floor confused and terrified over what happened that night. If it wasn't for the scar, I would have assumed the entire thing was a nightmare from being stressed from work in such odd cases. I should have died that night. Jackalope did something to save me, and I had no way of figuring out his fate. The next few weeks, we made no progress on the odd clipping cases. They started to slowly go closer to the cold case pile, and in the meantime, I started to do little things in my life so I wouldn't have the same regrets as I did before. First, I donated some blood and then put myself down for an organ donor. If I died the next day, I might be able to save someone. That was a slight improvement over the useless life I'd lived so far. I then adopted a rabbit. I really wasn't home enough for one, but I still got him. The people at the animal shelter worked with me to make sure I had everything set up for him, and even put him on hold until I got everything together. I wasn't even aware the animal shelters kept rabbits. Here I thought they just took in dogs and cats, and soon I owned a 1-year-old white rabbit named Pesto. After all my minor improvements, I still felt guilty, as if I didn't deserve my second chance. Trying to shake off those thoughts, I went to the pet store to buy more supplies and toys for Pesto. I pulled my car into the driveway and my heart nearly stopped when I saw someone sitting on my front porch. Gathering my shopping bags, I walked over and stopped just before the stone steps, thinking I might be seeing things. Jackalope sat wearing a large wool coat and a small travel bag sat next to him. The left side of his lips were torn and scarred over so badly that his teeth showed through. His left eye was a dull blue and he wore glasses. More guilt tore through my stomach, but he only gave me a smile. I got fired, he told me with that same worn smile on his face. I got so choked up I couldn't respond. I walked up the few steps to my front door. "Can you take these so I can unlock the door?" I asked him, holding out the shopping bags. He knew where I kept my spare key. I didn't know why he waited outside until I got back. He reached out to take the bags, but something felt off. Focusing on his movements, I nearly dropped my key when I realized what wasn't right. The left coat sleeve flapped around empty. Not only did he become half blind for my sake, but he also lost an arm. Terrible guilt twisted inside my stomach. No matter how I lived my life from now on, I would never be able to repay such a sacrifice. Why would you give up your arm for someone like me? It wasn't worth it. I couldn't meet his eyes as my stomach tightened. You were kind enough to think about me after we met. It seems like you're still thinking about me, he added with a small laugh, and raised up the pet supply bag to prove a point. I could have adopted a cat, but I'd adopted a rabbit because I felt guilty. That's not enough of a reason to go so far. People have lost a lot more for a lot less. Pulling out a sucker from his pocket, he started to try and open the wrapper with one hand. I reached out and took it from him to open, only for him to offer it back to me. I couldn't bring myself to refuse the offer. He lived the life of a person who had nothing and no one in his life. Not a soul thought of him after they met. He had one job, with an organization I didn't know a thing about. Given a name that reflected his non-existence in the world, I had the sudden realization that my life wasn't worthless until that point. If one small gesture, like buying candy for a stranger, affected another so greatly, I may have done other extraordinary acts without being aware of them. They kicked me out of the recovery station and I'm in a bit of a pickle. I didn't want to bother you, but I don't know anyone else. May I crash on your couch for a few days until I can get myself a bit more in order? He saved my life. I wasn't certain how, but that didn't change how much I owed him. I would have forced him to stay if he didn't ask. Nodding, I finished unlocking the front door so we could go inside. We still haven't solved the cases of the clipped bodies. I didn't ask him questions about his job or what is really going on. Right now, I just wanted Jackalope to get settled. He didn't say so, but he looked tired. I introduced him to Pesto and sat down to type all this out. When I came back to check on him, he'd fallen asleep on the couch with a pistol in his chest. I may not know anything about him, but I trust him. After he recovers, we'll work towards solving the strange body cases without the help of his mystery organization. They tossed him away after he broke whatever rules and saved me. I needed to prove to myself that what he sacrificed was worth it.